Room 313. The rain fell heavily that night, drumming against the cracked windows of the old Rosewood Hotel. Once a place of elegance and prestige, the hotel had now decayed into a skeleton of its former self. Paint peeling from the walls, carpet stained from decades of neglect, and corridors filled with the stale odor of mildew and dust. Travelers rarely stopped there anymore. Locals whispered about its history, about the accidents, the suicides, and the strange disappearances that had happened inside its walls. Most of these rumors pointed to one place in particular, Room 313. A rival, Daniel Harper, a 32-year-old freelance journalist, had heard these stories for years. He specialized in investigating urban legends and haunted locations. His readers loved his chilling tales, and he made a decent living by exploring the forgotten corners of the world. But he wasn't just writing for others. He wanted proof, real proof, that the supernatural existed. That's why, on that stormy night, he checked into the Rosewood Hotel and specifically requested Room 313. The receptionist, a pale woman with deep lines under her eyes, froze when Daniel mentioned the room. "Sir," she whispered, leaning closer, "I wouldn't advise that. Room 313 isn't suitable for guests." "That's exactly why I want it," Daniel said with a faint smile, adjusting the strap of his camera bag. Her hands trembled as she slid the old brass key across the counter. "Don't say I didn't warn you." First impressions. The hallway leading to Room 313 was darker than the others. The overhead lights flickered, buzzing faintly as if reluctant to stay on. Daniel stopped in front of the door. Faded green paint chipped away to reveal gray wood beneath. The number 313 hung crookedly, one nail missing. He turned the key. The door creaked open, releasing a rush of stale air that smelled faintly of rot and something metallic. Blood, perhaps. Inside, the room was modest. A single bed, a dresser with a cracked mirror, and heavy curtains that blocked out most of the storm. The wallpaper peeled like dried skin, and water stains spread across the ceiling. Daniel set his camera on the dresser and began unpacking. He would document everything: strange noises, temperature drops, moving shadows. His heart raced with excitement, though a small voice inside whispered that he had made a mistake. The first signs, for the first few hours, nothing unusual happened. Daniel recorded himself walking around the room, describing its features, and sat on the creaky bed flipping through his notes about the hotel's history. But around midnight, he felt it. The temperature dropped sharply, his breath forming faint clouds in the air. The storm outside grew louder, yet in the room, everything fell eerily silent. The ticking of his wristwatch stopped. The digital clock on the nightstand blinked 3:13 a.m. and froze. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on the door. Daniel jumped, his camera instantly in his hand. He rushed to the door and flung it open. The hallway was empty. But when he turned back, the bed sheets were rumpled, as if someone had just been sitting there. The mirror. Daniel steadied his nerves. He reminded himself that fear was part of the job. He adjusted the camera toward the cracked mirror on the dresser. For a moment, he saw only his own reflection. Tired eyes, a nervous smile. But then something shifted. Behind him, in the reflection, stood a figure. A tall, shadowy silhouette loomed near the corner of the room. Its face was obscured, but its hollow eyes gleamed faintly white. Daniel spun around. Nothing. The corner was empty. When he looked back at the mirror, the shadow remained, closer now, standing directly behind him. Heart hammering, Daniel grabbed the dresser and turned the mirror away. But no matter how he angled it, the shadow stayed visible. And with every passing second, it drew nearer. He tried to leave. He grabbed the doorknob, but it wouldn't turn. The key refused to fit. It was as if the door had fused into the wall itself. Then he heard it. A whisper. "Stay." The voice came from inside the room, soft but cold enough to freeze the air. Daniel backed against the wall, holding up his camera like a shield. "Who are you?" he demanded. The whisper grew louder. "Stay with us." The bed creaked as though unseen weight pressed against it. The curtains swayed through the windows were shut. The mirror trembled on the dresser. Daniel raised the camera, recording everything. Through the viewfinder, he saw movement. Shapes writhing in the shadows, dozens of pale, twisted faces staring at him. They weren't just one spirit. Room 313 was full of them. The history revealed. Daniel recalled what he had read. Decades ago, room 313 had been the site of a gruesome murder. A guest had gone mad, slaughtering his wife and children before taking his own life. But that was only the beginning. Afterward, anyone who stayed in the room for more than a night would vanish without a trace. Some said the spirits consumed their souls, binding them forever to the room. He realized now the stories were true. The souls of the lost were trapped here, and they wanted him too. Descent into terror. The whispers grew into screams. Daniel pressed his hands over his ears, but the voices pierced through. The shadows crawled along the walls like living creatures. The mirror shattered suddenly, shards scattering across the floor. In the broken pieces, Daniel saw his reflection, but not his current self. He saw himself hanging from the ceiling, his face pale, eyes lifeless. In another shard, he saw himself slashing his own wrists. In yet another, he saw his body lying in the bathtub, drowned. The room wasn't just haunted, it was showing him his fate. The final hour, Daniel clutched his camera, desperate to escape. He pounded on the door, screamed for help, but his voice was swallowed by the storm. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe. Then the clock on the nightstand flickered back to life. The numbers glowed red. 3:13 a.m. Every light went out. In the darkness, icy hands grabbed him, pulling him back toward the bed. Faces emerged from the shadows, mouths open in silent screams. Daniel fought, thrashing against them, but the more he struggled, the stronger they became. His camera fell from his hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud. The last thing it recorded was Daniel's terrified face as he was dragged into the shadows. Epilogue. The next morning, the maid found room 313 empty. The bed neatly made, the mirror perfectly intact, the air still and silent. But the camera remained on the floor. When the receptionist viewed the footage, she dropped it in horror. For there, in the final moments of the recording, Daniel's reflection still stared into the lens, his lips mouthing a single word, "Stay."